Hello there everyone, I hope wherever you are you're having an amazing day or evening and that life's going good, honestly. With the close of the Modern Warfare 2 beta, I wanted to make a quick video just talking about my initial impressions and the things that I really liked about the beta, and then also things that I didn't quite like as much as maybe I thought I would going in. Things that stood out to me that I feel should change before the actual release of the game. This is going to be essentially a list of the pros and cons and things that I hope to see changed, or things that I hope to see addressed before the actual release of the game. And bear in mind, this is from the perspective of someone who thoroughly played Battlefield and isn't actually very familiar with COD games. I've always heard of them, I've always seen them played, I've seen, videos talking about them and such, but I've never actually jumped into the genre before, jumped into this type of field before. And I want to hopefully let that be a positive thing, in that I can give a fresh opinion and perspective from someone who has very little experience. Perhaps that'll be a fresh take, it'll be something good instead of something negative. Also, to preface everything, this is just a beta. I understand that, I recognize that, and I don't want these sorts of opinions to be heated or things that I'm so hung up on, especially smaller details, because I know that everything is subject to change, and we played this as a test. It is a beta, and it's just to show where the game is at and things that the developers will go back and actually address, given our feedback. That's the entire purpose of this beta, is to see the player feedback and adjust things as need be. So with that in mind, I will hopefully give some valid feedback, valid opinions, and help steer the developers in the right direction, especially with the consensus across the multiple community inputs given from other YouTubers or even potentially Reddits or any forums. And in that, I hope to reciprocate a lot of the thoughts and sentiments of the fellow content creators on the platform, and hopefully they can agree with me, and hopefully you guys can agree with me as well on a lot of the things that need changing. The first thing I wanted to touch base on is the movement in the game. I feel like the movement is weighty and realistic, but not debilitating. Rather, it feels like something that needs to be mastered, which is exciting, to me personally. I enjoyed how grounded and controllable my soldier felt, and how engaging everything felt, the way I interacted with the environment and the way the environment interacted with me in kind. There was a satisfying sense of fluidity and ruggedness to everything that I did. I enjoyed the elements of verticality that they offered to the game and the gameplay style, especially when it came to a lot of the map design and the way that they promoted that actual verticality. I'm also quite a fan of the removal of slide cancelling. It seems like they wanted to go a more realistic route in that regard, and I feel like that was a fair change on that part, especially for the push for realism. I am aware of the exploit that allowed people to still slide cancel in the beta, but more than likely that will be removed before launch day. However, still on the topic of sliding, I felt that sliding itself was very punishing to the player, and it actually punished a style of play that I felt was fast-paced and enjoyable. It was a detriment entirely to slide, because you weren't able to shoot or anything of that kind. So I would personally like to see them add back aim down sights or firing while sliding, because that itself isn't very unrealistic, and I also feel it would promote a healthy style of play into the game. Now onto the sound design and sound changes. I feel there's a vast improvement to the footstep noise. It's very easy now to hear your enemy. There are some pros and cons to that idea, but I want to touch on some of the pros first. It is a drastic change. You can hear your enemy incredibly well, as opposed to how it was in previous Call of Duty titles. I know there were many complaints about the inability for you to hear your enemy coming up to you, and that has been completely overhauled and addressed. This, however, is not without its drawbacks. I feel far too often I was able to directly follow my enemy right through walls, knowing exactly when they were moving and how they were moving, and it sort of promoted a style of gameplay that was sit and wait. As the beta went on and I adapted to the style of play, I realized that it was more beneficial to just wait your enemy out and be the last to move, because the individual that moved first was typically the one who would lose the fight. You could hear them so well that you could pre-aim every corner that they were coming around. It personally felt a bit too cheesy, and it punished the style of gameplay that was run and gun, fast-paced and going for aggression, which is the style of gameplay that I preferred, and I had to completely change the way I played the game because that was the style that was punished most. On top of that idea, dead silence as now a field upgrade is something that punished you for using it, which is counterintuitive to the entire design of dead silence. You would pop that thing and people could hear you go, like through the actual map, and it was frustrating to hear that in the kill cam and be like, wow, why did I use that? I got myself killed, where I could have just crouched and moved slowly rather than use dead silence at all. So I hope they change that or find some way to counteract that. There were also moments where I would instinctively AD tap just to move in place to keep myself always on the move, and I would get shot through a wall, and I thought, oh, okay, like, what just happened? And I would listen back to the kill cam, and very slightly tapping A and D sounded like I had concrete bricks on my feet, and people could literally bat sonar me through the entire wall. So we'll see if that changes by launch date. Hopefully they reduce those sounds just a little bit to promote a bit more aggression and a bit more movement. Now onto the gunplay. The gunplay I felt personally was incredible. It was really rewarding. It promoted you learning your platform properly and learning the recoil patterns, and it also balanced out well the attachments that you would put onto your weapon. You would adapt your attachments for your personal style of play, and I found that incredibly rewarding going into each engagement. There was a particular type of intensity that came with every single gunfight and engagement, which I personally really loved, and I also adored that you couldn't just beam players from long range. You had to really control your gun and know your kit well. Though one con that I did have with the system that I hope is addressed by launch day is the fact that there was so much visual clutter from the shooting of your gun that you could typically lose your target in engagements. And that I hope is something that gets addressed, because I don't want my aim to be impacted by visual clutter, something that I cannot control. I also personally found there to be a small imbalance between specific weapon platforms. However, platforms aside, one thing I do want to mention as a pro is just how beautiful the guns both felt and sounded. It really did add to that immersion, that engagement of each gunfight, and the guns really felt punchy, they felt real, they felt in your hands, and that is just a beautiful thing that they've achieved in that game. Finally, I wanted to quickly address the SBMM, or skill-based matchmaking, in the game, because I feel that currently it has good intentions but can punish certain players given who they play with and the type of performance that they offer to the game. I feel the system is important, and it protects newer players that don't actually know what they're doing and haven't experienced a game like Call of Duty in the past, and don't know what to look for and how to perform in the game, and it saves them from the frustration of being constantly rolled by more experienced players. However, it becomes very quickly apparent that the better you do, the more you will be punished, and furthermore, if you play with players that are less experienced than yourself, and you and another friend are very experienced, that one player will become very quickly punished for even trying to play with you, and that in itself becomes very disappointing very quickly. You start to have to try very hard in order to have a good time, and will be continuously rolled time and again as you try to encourage them and say, hey, look, it's just the skill-based matchmaking, you're going to get better. Case in point for this is actually a friend that I have, where we ended up getting lobbies with very good players, and he just wasn't able to keep up with the type of skill that they had, because they had experienced the game before, whereas he was new to the game, and we got moments like this. Oh, they're doing the reses.
Gotta know. I fucking suck.
No. As funny as these moments are, they can lead to a lot of frustrations and a lot of new players putting down the game with the sentiment that they could never get better fast enough to enjoy it and make it worth the $70 price tag. And that's why I kind of hope that the skill-based matchmaking is a little less impactful in casual games and is rather fully integrated into the competitive modes. With all those opinions, thoughts, impressions, and criticisms out of the way, I want to end this entire video on the note of saying that the beta was very, very awesome. I enjoyed every minute of it. I really, really loved how much content there was available to us, how in-depth the beta was, how much we were able to interact and experience the game. And unlike Battlefield 2042, we weren't offered a minimalist look and an incomplete view of where the game was going to be. We weren't lied to and told that this beta was months ahead of schedule. Rather, we were given a flat-out, functional, fully available, working beta that had very minimal issues, but allowed us to create a great foundation with the developers in order to move forward and help the developers make a game that we could play for the years to come. All in all, with the fixes and criticisms taken in a good light, and the developers actually making these changes and working with the community to properly realize this game upon launch, I think we're going to have a really, really well thought out product that we're going to all enjoy and get into. With all that said, I thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and I could only hope the criticisms and opinions I provided were helpful to the entire growth of the game and the gameplay community. I once again hope you have a wonderful evening or day wherever you are, and take care.